Ghost of Tsushima Legends is finally out, and wow, is it good. I've been playing it every spare moment since Friday, so here are some tips to help you out. Most of these will focus on survival mode, so keep that in mind. Alright, first of all, let's get started with one tip that more players really need to pay attention to, and that is to move the barrels. Every map has tons of exploding barrels scattered around, and for some reason, the people I matchmake with seem to completely disregard their existence. These barrels are incredibly powerful and can take down and incapacitate dozens of enemies at a time. So make sure to use any downtime you have between the waves to move these around. Use your focused hearing to locate them and then place them in the key locations like bottlenecks and the middle of the sectors that you need to defend. These will make a massive difference when you're running late into a sector and there's a bunch of enemies capping. Just pause for a second before they react to you and take the shot before that, because once they see you, they will start moving and getting a hit on the barrel will be much harder. Explosive barrels will respawn over time, with some of them being super close to where you want to move them, while others spawn pretty much in the middle of nowhere. However, you can always pick them up, move them as much as you can before the wave starts, and then keep moving them once the wave is over. One thing I really like to do is hide a second barrel somewhere close for an easy reload once the enemies are dead. It saves a lot of time to have these backups once you already have at least one set in every sector. Also, you don't really want to stack them too close and have them all go off at once. That will obviously do more damage, but since each explosion will catch enemies on fire, it's best to use them one at a time so you don't run out of barrels and maximize their use as much as possible. Okay, let's move on to number 2. Learn the routes. Getting to the different caps as fast as possible becomes increasingly more important with each wave you beat in survival mode. So learning where the grapple points are and where you can reliably swing to is absolutely paramount. I say reliably because some grappling points can be a bit finicky, so try getting as much practice as possible to get the timing and camera position right to ensure you get the prompt. Also, before a new wave starts, you want to put yourself somewhere where you can easily access any point in the map. This will often mean staying in high ground, since that will provide a good view of where the fireworks are going off and you will have access to a wide variety of different routes. More often than not, being able to quickly get some height, be it scaling a wall or climbing up a rooftop, will provide the fastest way to get anywhere you want to go, so keep an eye out for carts, ladders, or rocks that you can use to get around faster. As a bonus tip, if you want to mess around a level quite freely without the clock ticking, use the first phase where you have to initially clear out the camps to get a good look at the layout and try out different jumps that you haven't tried before. Just clear 2 of the 3 camps and practice before clearing out the third one, and you will have some time to try things out. Number 3. Healing drum etiquette. This one is really important when you're first starting out in the game and healing abilities are almost non-existent. Please use the ping system to point out a healing drum before using it. They don't last very long and take quite some time to become available again, so don't be the guy that strikes the barrel completely alone while everyone is at low health. I've seen this happen multiple times at lower levels. Often someone strikes a drum with the rest of the team being too far away to get the full heal, even if they manage to reach it before it times out. Also, if you want to ping these or any other interactable object, make sure to enter focus hearing mode first, as that will highlight the outline of every object and allow you to ping them through walls. Okay, on to number 4, selecting your character. Every character in the game plays quite differently from one another, and once you choose one, you will be stuck with that character until you reach rank 10 before you unlock a new one. The samurai is basically a life-stealing tank that's best suited for taking on large groups of enemies. The assassin has some similar skills that allow him to take down multiple targets very quickly, but is more focused on dealing massive damage to high-value targets. And the hunter and ronin are your ranged and support characters respectively, which are pretty awesome to have in a party, but can make things quite challenging if you happen to get a party with like 3 ronin. If you want to unlock every character as fast as possible, you will want to switch to the new one every time, since it's easier to level up those first few rank levels and get a new character that way than it is to level from rank 10 to 20, for example. However, you might want to stick to the first one that you picked to get better gear and use that to equip the new classes you unlock and make them instantly better. I also found story missions seem to provide more XP in a shorter amount of time compared to survival mode, so you might want to focus on that in order to reach rank 10. Keep in mind, some classes like the Samurai are quite powerful early on, while others only really get their good skills once you level them up. So don't just throw some level 60 gear on a rank 1 Ronin and hop into a silver rank match, because you will regret it. And lastly, skills do not stack once you unlock them, which isn't really explained in the tutorial. You get to pick one per row and that is it. I found several people online get confused when they find out they've replaced their favorite skill by accident with something entirely different. Number 5. Reroll your gear. Legends is surprisingly generous at allowing you to reroll item stats multiple times. You can reroll the entire item or choose to target specific properties, but watch out, once you roll one line of properties, you won't be able to roll the other ones unless you reroll the entire item again. Rerolling everything is the only way that you will increase the item's key level, so if you have an epic item that is now under leveled, you can reroll it to be able to equip it without lowering your key rating. That key rating will affect how much damage you deal and how much damage you take, so make sure you try and keep that number as high as possible. When rolling to change a specific effect or property, check out the list on the right, since that will show the different stats that you might get. Once you've rolled, you will be asked if you want to change the stat or keep whatever you had before, so don't worry about getting something worse than you already have. And now onto some basic combat moves. Tip number 6, the jump kick and shove. You can perform the jump kick by pressing triangle after jump, and you can do the shove or shoulder charge by running up to an enemy and pressing circle. Both these moves can be extremely useful, especially when dealing with enemies with shields without having the proper stance on your katana. The shove will knock them to the ground, while the kick will stagger them briefly, allowing you to get some more free hits in. You can't spam these too much though, because enemies will start pushing you out of the way if you do, and keep in mind that the shove will have no effect on heavies. However, it is extremely useful at disabling an enemy and start wailing at another target, which is quite useful for taking down those pesky archers without their friends interfering. Also, just to throw this in, don't just wail on enemies with square once they start blocking. Wait for them to counterattack and block them for an easy opening. Number 7. Get the bear. Every survival map has a bunch of offering shrines where you can cash in your points mid-match to get a bunch of different skills. Health regeneration is extremely useful if you get one of those poison-infused enemy waves, since the poison takes quite some time to go away and it will slow down and interrupt your movement. But the bear is definitely the best when dealing with boss waves. Bears can quite easily stun lock the heavy Onis and other elite units, meaning they can single-handedly take the toughest enemies in the game completely out of combat. In my opinion, this and the health regen are the best ones to get, since there are multiple ways of catching enemies on fire, so the ignite enemies isn't as useful, and the dogs, while useful as a distraction, can get completely destroyed by single enemies later on. Okay, number 8. Save your ultimate. I'm guilty of not doing this way too often, to be honest. Every 5 waves, you get a boss wave, with tougher enemies and modifiers that can render even a dead enemy absolutely deadly. So, if you have your ultimate charged up on round 4 or 9 or whatever, try to refrain from using it and instead save it for the boss wave. It takes quite some time to charge up the resolve needed for ultimates, and it's best to use it to take down the toughest enemies, such as those annoying crows that can be extremely tough to fight. Having your ultimate and shrine abilities saved for these encounters makes a huge difference, so don't use your ultimate to wipe out a couple of targets at the end of the round right before a boss wave. Tip number 9. Stay on that circle. Once you rid a sector of enemies, you still have to reset the area completely before moving on. Otherwise, if another enemy wave gets spawned in that area, they will start taking control at whatever progress you left the sector in. So, say you leave with it being half capped, you probably won't be able to reach the sector in time before the enemy fully captures it. Take a look at the rings on the ground and make sure that they've collapsed into a spike in the middle before moving on. It might take a couple more seconds, but you will be surprised at how much this helps keeping every sector under control once you start getting more and more enemy waves. And lastly, number 10, stances. Each katana has one default stance, with some of them allowing you to switch to other stances as well. I'm pretty sure later on I will get katanas with all stances, or at least I hope, but once you get a good one that's able to switch stances, I would really recommend you try and get one that has the stances for dealing with heavies and shield guys, so moon and water stances. Shield-wielding enemies often spam unblockable red attacks and can be extremely hard to hit since they will block basically anything. Having a proper stance will help a ton, and the same goes for heavies. If you have the moon stance, just spam triangle to stagger them and then wail at them freely. Stone stance and wind stance, which are for dealing with swordsmen and spearmen, aren't as useful in my opinion, since you can still parry their attacks without the proper stance, which, if I remember correctly, was not the case for spearmen in the single player mode. Alright, that's all I have for you today. If you have any other tips that you want to share, please leave them down in the comment section. And if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like or consider subscribing to the channel for more content like this. As always, thank you for watching, and I hope I will catch you in the next one.